Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for checking out the vlog. It's been a whole week since I've seen you last. This episode, as per usual, is coming out of Outlaws, as many of you may have guessed. But we're going to Vegas in precisely 2 days from when I'm recording this, not from when it releases, because that would be a day after. So the day after you see this vlog, we'll be in Vegas. Not sure if the places we're going to go to allow us to record, but you might get some sessions from Las Vegas. Anyhow, that's irrelevant to this episode. There was a crazy amount of action, mostly induced by yours truly, and we were absolutely all over the place this episode. I don't want to spoil anything, so we'll jump right into it. So without further ado, we bring to you Monte Poker, episode 16. First hand of the night starts us off with a $6 straddle under the gun with $5.25 in our stack. Everybody limps around over to us. We look down at Jack 9 offsuit, not a super strong hand, also not a weak hand. Unless you flop 2 pair with it, then it becomes a strong hand. This board is pretty wet, but I still decide to go for a small bet sizing of about $12. This will get a lot of people with any Queen X or Jack X to call us. Also, obviously, any clubs or any 10s are also going to put in the call. So the cutoff decides to put in the call, the button also calls, and then the small blind ends up mucking their hands. We are off to this turn 3 ways with $61 in the middle, which comes a 3 of spades, which we refer to as a brick in the poker world because it changes absolutely nothing on this board. We still have a super strong hand, so we're gonna bump up the price just a smidge here. On the turn, $60 is the bet sizing that I decide to go with, making this pot 120. It's a pretty good price for our opponents to call if they're on a draw. If they have a weak queen, they may not call a bet sizing this big unless of course they have queen 10, so they would have an open-ended straight draw with the queen. If they have any 2 clubs, they're obviously going to put in the call. If they have just a 10 with no pair, it might be a bit tougher, but they would still be open-ended with a straight draw. So the opponent on the cutoff ends up putting in the call. The button thinks it over for a little bit longer, but does indeed also put in the call. So we're off to this river 3 ways with 241 in the middle, which comes a 4 of clubs. This is not the card that we wanted to see. The front door flush obviously gets there. The straight completely misses, but we're just going to check and evaluate to see what we want to do here. Cutoff ends up betting $90 on this river card. This bet sizing seems a bit small. If she would have hit the flush, I'd expect her to go a bit bigger. She may have had king queen, so top pair with a straight draw, maybe also king 10 would be pretty sweet here because it would be open-ended. If she had queen jack, a bigger 2 pair, I would have expected to hear from her earlier in the hand. So at this point, I think our 2 pair might be good against this particular opponent, but then the button is still thinking it over, and it looks like he's getting ready to put some chips in the middle, and he does eventually put in the call. He just flatted, so I don't expect him to have the nut flush here, but it's possible that he has a small flush and doesn't want someone to come over the top. Either way, I don't think I'm going to be good into 2 opponents here, so I end up putting the cards in the muck, and then our opponent shows 9-3 for a smaller 2 pair, and it's good. Yikes, 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 yikes. What is going on? There's no way we're ever good there with just a 2 pair. There's already a potential straight on the board. There's 3 to a flush. Was this too nitty? I don't know. Maybe because the players just flatted, it would have been okay to call, but I feel like we're very rarely ever good there. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. An hour and a half later, we look down at ace queen offsuit on the small blind. Our stack took a bit of a hit since the last hand, but that's okay. There's $92 in this pot. We have a couple limpers, a raise to 15, and then 1 caller in the middle. I decided to bump this up and make it $50 to go, trying to get rid of some players. Unfortunately, that doesn't work. The under the gun player puts in the call for 50. Under the gun +1 also calls 50. The limping players in the middle decide to fold. The action gets back to the cutoff, who says $50 is not enough. He decides to re-raise once again to 150. The button decides that this is too much. He folds. I ask for a count, and now we have a decision to make. What does our opponent have, and what do we want to do? I'm going to tell you what I'm not going to do. I'm not just going to call. I'm either going to fold or go all in this spot. I already have $50 in the middle. The pot is $3
320. I only have about $200 behind. The question is, does our opponent who raised pre-flop the cutoff have queens, kings, or aces? In this situation, he raised 15 pre when a couple people had already limped into the pot. If he had queens, kings, or aces, I feel like he would have gone $25, $30, $35 pre-flop with that money in the middle. And then, you know, if he raised and got re-raised, it would have been a good time to bump this up a significant amount, maybe somewhere around 200, maybe even 250. But just raising another 100 with, you know, people that already have 50 committed to the pot and the pot's 320, they're getting priced into calls. So I just didn't take this as a very strong bet in the situation. Given all that information, I put our opponent on either ace jack, definitely not ace king, or some sort of in-between pocket pair, anything between eights to jacks. So for those reasons, we decided to rip it, and this is what happened.
Let's go for it.
All right, he's moving all in. Looks like a total of 251. Okay, he's going.
Oh, baby.
Oh,
it's going to be great. I'm excited.
More than 250.
Oh. Good luck.
Good luck.
Nah, I got overseas.
251.
Shit.
Shit. I had queen six suited.
Shit. Give me an ace. Give me an
Case
ace.
queen covered.
In the window, Johnny. In the window.
Monkey.
Oof. 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 Damn.
Unfortunately, we do not win this one, but it was a fun hand. There was a lot of money in the middle, and the set of tens takes it down. Good job, Mr. Cutoff.
You probably need a shotgun on your blog, dude.
Nice hand.
We may have lost that last one, but we aren't done just quite yet. I rebuy for 600 and we play for another hour or so before we get to this particular hand. We have 625 in our stack on the big blind with 5-6 suited. This isn't a hand I usually like to play out of position, especially not when we have a villain raised to $30. The action folds around and it gets to me, and I say, screw it, let's see a flop. What's the worst that can happen? We miss. We've been missing all night. That's not anything new to us. The opponent right after me, the under the gun player, does decide to put in the call as well. So we go 3 ways to this flop, $91 in the middle. Let's see what we can do here. The board runs out 4-7-7 with 1 diamond. So we have an open-ended straight here. Any 3 or any 8 would give us a straight. If it goes runner diamonds, we would have the flush as well. The pre-flop aggressor ends up betting $100. It seems like a really big bet. You made about a pot-sized bet. I do decide to flick in the call here because I'm curious. I feel like we have good equity, and if he has an overpair, there's a good chance that he's going to blast off real big on the turn. I check it over to our opponent. Unfortunately, he checks it back, so now we have to bet on this river card, which comes a 3 of spades. This is rather unfortunate. I was going to bet about pot, so fire out for about 300 on the river, but now the board has paired twice, which means if he has a 7, he now has a full house beating our straight. I don't really think that's likely considering his bet sizings. If he had a 7, he probably would have bet smaller so other people can continue calling and catch up. But now it's going to be harder to get value with this run out. So I decide to downsize a little bit here, and we lead out for 125 on this river. Doesn't take very long for our opponent to announce call, and then we show our straight. It ends up being good, and we take down this $540 pot. About half an hour goes by and we look down a Q9 offsuit with 693 in our stack. There was a small raise pre-flop and we decided to get spicy and get in there for $15. We end up flopping top pair with a marginal kicker. There's not really a lot of draws out there. I guess 5-6 has an open-ended straight, but no flush draws. Player in the middle decides to bet $50 and then the 2 players after him end up folding. I put in the call because we have a pair, a really big pair, and not the one on the table. I have the button and I plan to use it. So after we put in the call, the player after us also decides to call and we're off to this turn 3 ways. Johnny throws a 6 of diamonds out there. The first villain checks. The villain in the middle also puts
puts in the check, and now it is time to bet. Like I said, we have the button and we plan to use it. So we got to go pretty big here. How big? I don't know. How about something around the ballpark of 125? If I had ace queen or any sort of two pair, also a set, I would bet around this amount. So when we're bluffing, we also want to stay balanced and bet just around the same amount. And to my surprise, the big blind puts in the call. Player in the middle folds. I don't know if the big blind has a hand or if he just thinks we're full of it because he didn't bet himself. The river comes a 2 of hearts, and I'm just staring this man down. He does put in the check again, so we have to continue our story that we have a really good hand, and I have to size up once again, but don't want to go too big here and pot commit ourselves with just a pair of queens. I grab some chips and line up $250, throw it in the middle. Our opponent doesn't seem too pleased. He very quickly looks at his hand, which usually means they're gonna fold, and he does in fact muck his hand. So we scoop this $700 pot here and throw a couple dollars over to our boy Johnny. The next hand is a PLO Bomb Pot. For those of you that don't know, that is 4 cards instead of 2, but you have to play 2 from your hand and then use 3 on the board. Anyhow, we have 970 in our stack and they cut off with 5, 8, 4, 10, all different suits. The board comes out 10 of hearts, 5 of diamonds, 5 of clubs rather, 3 of diamonds with $90 in the middle. The action checks all the way around, and I'm feeling a bit spicy for some reason, as I mentioned earlier, and decide to bet out onto this board with just top 2. Not necessarily a great hand. We're losing to sets of 3s, 5s, and 10s, but because everybody checked and this is a capped PLO bomb pot, I don't expect people to have that great of hands. There's no straights available, there's no flushes available, so the only thing that people could really have that are beating us here are just, you know, pocket pairs that hit the board. And since we have a 10 and a 5, we have some removal to those hands. So pocket 3s is really the biggest thing that we're worried about. And even if they're out there, you know, we could hit another 5 or another 10 to, you know, pick up a bigger full house than the pocket 3s. The action goes all the way around the table. There's 3 callers, but one of them raises it to the cap, which is 90 bucks. I end up calling the 90 bucks, and we're just going to run out this board here and see if we can hold.
We got a 5 and a 3. 5 and a 4.
Wait, 8 and a 10 now?
10 and 8.
There's no way this is actually good here. There's no way 2 pairs is good. We're getting slow rolled so hard by the guy over in the corner. Look at him. Look at him. He's looking so suspicious holding his cards up in the corner like that. And he throws down air. We're good. 8s and 10s are actually good. That's actually insane. This rarely happens in PLO, but I'm not going to complain about scooping this $450 pot. Thank you very much, Mark. You are a G. 20 minutes go by and we run our stack up to 1498 from the previous hand. We are on the small blind. To some of the newer players that don't know what a straddle is, it basically means that a player on the table, usually right after the blinds or right before the blinds, threw in extra money before he even got to look at his hand. So the pot started off with $19. 2 more players called, bumping that up, and then a 3rd player called. So now this pot is a pretty reasonable size, but it gets even better. The cutoff decides to raise for 75, and the guy that's already in for 15 on the button calls. We look down at our hand and look at aces, freaking aces. Oh my God, we hadn't looked at our hand before the action got to us because there was a $15 straddle and I didn't want to give away information, and I'm so glad we didn't. This is the absolute dream spot. There's already $200 in here and the action's on us. We're gonna raise fat. We don't want everyone to come along, maybe 1, 2 players max at most. So I raised to $200. This should be a big enough bet sizing to get all the players in the middle out of the way, and either the cutoff or the button might call, which is exactly what we need in this situation. Aces do not play well into multiple people. The middle position player, after tanking for a few minutes, does end up throwing his cards into the muck. Susie quickly mucks right after him, and then the action is back to the player that raised 275, my boy Shelby. This man is constantly putting me in the blender whenever we get into pots together. He's very tough, very aggressive, but also very smart. I feel like I'm constantly being put into situations where I have to make decisions for my entire chip stack. I respect the hell out of him, but this is one of the few times where I want him to get out of line, and that's when it happens. My boy did not disappoint. He has us covered, so there's 18-21 in the middle. We're obviously gonna snap this off. I'm sorry, Shelby, we actually have it this time.
Next. You got
I know that you're trying to get
Yeah.
It's gonna play out like that no matter what.
Oh, shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't think about it at the time, but Shelby's not the type of player to get out of line and bluff for $1,400 into a pot of, you know, 300 or 400. He's capable of bluffing for a large size, but there's got to be enough money in there to make it worth it, right? Anyhow, he had pocket kings, we had aces, they held. Absolute cooler. Happy to be on the winning end of this hand, but don't worry, bud. I'll keep these chips warm. I'm sure we'll get into it in the near future. The next hand brings us king, queen of diamonds in middle position. There was a $20 open by yours truly. We got two callers, one player on the cutoff and the other one in the small blind. We go off to this flop three ways with $60 in the middle. It comes out queen, ace, deuce with two hearts. I was the pre-flop aggressor, so we're going to have a lot of aces in our range. So I decided to continue here for $40. It was about 2/3 of the pot. The player in later position thinks it over for a little bit, looks down at his chips, which usually indicates that they're going to call. When they start stacking their chips, it's an even bigger indication that they're going to call, which he does do. The early position player does end up folding, so we're off to this turn heads up. The 5 of diamonds comes on the turn. I was planning on giving up after he had called my initial bet on the flop, but now we picked up the nut flush draw because the ace is already out there. So I decide to continue telling a story that we have a hand here. I bet $70 and our opponent goes into the take for a little bit. It's not a massive bet, but he's only put in $60 of his own money. The pot is around 212, but more than half of it is money that I've put in. So I want to keep the price really small for him to call with any weak aces he might have. I don't want him to fold out any weaker aces. It's technically a head right now, but we can get those hands to fold on the river with a really big bet. And we could obviously hit another diamond to make our flush. But to my surprise, our opponent does not call. He min clicks it instead. Yikes, this looks extremely strong. I'm kind of worried. I think our opponent has a set, but we're drawing to the nut flush, so I can't quite fold here. It's only $70 more to make 360, so we end up flicking in the call and we're off to the river. The jack of clubs changes absolutely nothing for our hand. I sit here and tank for quite a while, thinking if I could potentially bluff our opponent off of this by jamming. I don't think I can, so I check and then he jams instead, or just about 400, so it's almost an exact pot sized bet. This sizing has my gears turning. If he actually had a really strong hand, like a set, why would he jam for 400? Why not go, you know, 150, 200, try to get me to call with a worse hand? In this situation, I'm not calling with anything that isn't king 10, so it really looks like a bluff, but we have been giving action for hours now and kind of punting. I know you guys haven't seen a lot of the punts because they've been smaller pots and really nothing too impressive, but we have been punting tonight, so he could be doing this to get me to call. It just doesn't feel right. I feel like we're behind. I'm gonna throw it away. Hopefully he had it. The rest of the night wasn't anything too special. Like I said, we had been playing a little wild tonight, splashing around a lot, giving a lot of action. So we got involved into a lot of pots that we really shouldn't have, calling with ace highs, you know, calling big pre-flop bets with, you know, ace 5 suited. We weren't playing like complete donkeys, but we were wilding for sure. You know, our stack ran up to well over 3,000 at one point in the session. And then, you know, it was just slowly whittling away after that. Part of that was, you know, we had just gotten into some big hands with individuals and I wanted to, you know, continue providing action and not just be ridiculously nitty. We were fortunate enough to have 2 or 3 winning sessions. So we definitely want to give people the opportunity to get their money back. I wasn't just donating, but, you know, maybe chasing a little more, maybe chasing a bit more than I typically do, playing a slightly wider range than normal, but overall we were still trying to play some sound poker. Anyhow, no real big hands for the rest of the night, so let's move over to our cash out.
What a session. Thank you very much if you made it this far into the video. I don't know if there was a wardrobe change between yesterday and today, but this is definitely a different day than we filmed our intro. Sorry, we're posting this in the afternoon and not the morning. We made some cool new animations, as you may have noticed, and they took much longer to do than I was expecting. But we still got the video out on a Thursday. We're technically not behind. All right, let's do the bankroll update for you guys. I forgot to include the screenshots last week, so I'm really sorry, but we are not making that mistake again. All right, so March 30th, 2004, we bought in for $900, cashed out $2,460, netting a $1,500 profit. It was over the course of 7 hours, but we freaking did it, ladies and gentlemen. And that gave us a huge jump on the graph. So our total bankroll is now $6,503. Freaking made it. Time to go pro. BRB, calling my boss, putting in my 2 weeks. No, I'm totally joking, but on the serious, totally kidding. But on a more serious note, wonderful session. Our bankroll's moving in the right direction. We have enough of a cushion now to start playing a little less tight, but we got to keep ourselves in check and not play too loose. Anyhow, that's enough of that. I need to get ready and pack for Vegas because we're heading out tomorrow at 6 in the morning and it is 10 o'clock. So we're not getting to bed until midnight because this video still got to render. Thank you so much for checking the video as per usual. Love the support. I got merch for you guys. So if you guys want a hat or a hoodie, please reach out to me. Either throw me a comment below if you're a local or shoot me a text if you already have my number. I know some of you have my number. Got a couple different sizes, but I only have like 14 hoodies and 10 hats. So they're going to go quick. I already got rid of like 4. So hit me up. All right, guys. See you later. Take care. Have a good weekend. Vegas update coming to you guys next week. Do not miss it.